Hello, and welcome to another episode of Evolution Now. Today, it is my pleasure to talk to 15-time Emmy-nominated and 2-time Emmy-winning filmmaker, Daniel Laikind. Hey, Daniel, it's a delight to have you here today. Thanks for joining us on Evolution Now.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
Great. So let's just start with how we met. I've known you for probably, a couple of months now. And we met at a pool party of John Levy. You were in the pool with your son Crosby, and I was with my girlfriends, horsing around, swimming around, and we chatted, and we realized that we had overlapped at Original Media, which, I was a lowly producer, a supervising producer, and you were running the entire company. Now, you've done a lot of work in film and television before that point, but it was kind of a fun way to meet, and I'm glad that you could be here today now to talk to me.
Super happy to be here. Yeah, I can't say that I have met a lot of people in swimming pools, but you were extremely kind and helped. I was there alone. My wife wasn't there, so it was me and my little tornado of a 3-year-old son, and you were helping to keep him distracted. And then, of course, we found our connections. And you were certainly not a lowly person at Original Media. It was people like you that made the engine of that company go, and I was just trying to hold on the steering wheel for dear life. So happy to reconnect and chat and tell you about all the other craziness other than swimming pool life.
So, Daniel, let's start with your background in film. Let's start from the beginning. How did you get into filmmaking and why?
So I'm an accidental TV and film person. All I ever wanted to do with my life was be a sports broadcaster. My goal was to be broadcasting New York Yankees games. And I went to school to study broadcasting. I went to Northwestern. That's what I was going to do. I had every internship, and that was my path. But the summer between your junior and senior year of college is sort of your last summer to do something different before the real world starts. And I was like, I'm going to go to Hollywood and see what I can do and get an internship. And I happened to get an internship at a small production company. I was the fourth person in a 3-person company, and I just handled everything from big to small. And at the end of the summer, the principals of the company said, listen, why don't you come work for us when you graduate? And I thought that spending my senior year of college with a job lined up was a good idea. So I went out to LA. I worked for them for a year. And then one of the principals of that company, he and I started making a documentary. I'm not sure I even knew what a documentary was at the time. I was 21. We started making a documentary in New York, which is where I'm from. And he and I worked really closely together. And unbeknownst to me, I produced it. I didn't know what producing was, but I basically just made a lot of things happen that no one else was making happen. And at the end of making that movie, he turned to me and he said, listen, instead of working for me in LA, why don't we start a company together in New York? And somehow I thought that being 23 and owning my own production company was a good idea. And so he and I started this company called Stick Figure Productions. I was there for 15 years and I haven't found a way to get out of it yet. Still keep going from project to project and have now found myself as a TV and film guy. But again, it was never part of the plan. It was always just take the opportunity that was in front of us and try and make the most of it.
It sounds like it's been an incredible ride, and you've produced a lot of content, a lot of stories for HBO and others. What Remains, Family Bonds. Can you talk about some of your favorite projects? And I want to also talk about my personal favorite, Devil's Playground, because that's a film that I saw when I was a teenager. I was obsessed with the stories of Amish people going out for Rumspringa, deciding whether or not they want to stay with the Amish community or go out into civilization. I found to be just fascinating and and for me, it really inspired me to want to step into different worlds and become a documentary filmmaker myself later on. So it's a real full circle moment that I'm here with you now, coincidentally, and I just find it to be so cool. So I want to hear all about what you've done and in whatever order you want.
Sure. Well, thank you. That's so meaningful. Although it can be a little heartbreaking when people tell me, "Oh, like I watched your movie in my AP English class," and I was like, "Oh, that just dates me." But no, that Devil's Playground it was really so. The first movie that I had made that I was talking about was a documentary about nightclub bouncers. And again, I really didn't know what documentaries were, but I knew how to talk to people. And a lot of my role was convincing, bouncers who are not normally too effusive to allow us to film them and to appear on camera, and convincing nightclubs to let us go in there with cameras. And that's when I realized what producing was. So I for Devil's Playground, I think it's a pretty good example of how I try to approach the entertainment world, particularly in the development side of things. And I think a lot of it is making sure your eyes and ears are always open, because you never know when the next great story might come. And it usually doesn't come from sitting down at your desk and working. It comes from paying attention. And again, much like meeting you in a swimming pool, I was, actually, I think I was 23. I was at a cocktail party with a friend of mine from high school who was there with a friend of his from college. And again, what do we do when we meet someone we don't know? We ask them a couple questions. And one of the questions that I asked him was, where are you from? He said, I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I just followed up by saying, oh, tell me something funny about growing up in Lancaster. I think I'd been to Lancaster on a school trip in 7th grade. And he said, well, I'm not sure that it's funny, but the last time I was at home, I was at a 7-Eleven and an Amish kid came over and asked me to buy him beer. And I'm like, no, the Amish don't drink, which by the way is not true. And he said, actually, Amish teenagers have this time period called Rumspringa where they're allowed to go and explore the outside world. And my jaw hit the floor. And I was like, what? I'd literally never heard of it. Again, I'm dating myself here, but I couldn't go Google the word Rumspringa because Google had not been invented. I had to go to a place called a library. Maybe you've heard of it. It's like a big building with lots of books. You've probably seen it in movies. You've maybe never
I've
been
seen
to
it in a
one,
movie. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. So I went to a library, the New York Public Library, and I searched the card catalogs for anything using the word Rumspringa. And I found one article that had been in New Yorker, and I printed it out from microfiche, brought it to my business partner. We had just started Stick Figure. And literally, with this article about this time period where Amish kids go off and explore the world, we went into HBO. And we had never made anything for HBO, but we had pitched them a few ideas, and they liked those ideas enough that they let us keep coming back, which to me is a very important lesson that I've always gone with, which is you might not sell something, but if you do your best and you bring people great ideas, they will let you come back for the next one. And maybe the next one is the one that they say yes to. And so we walked in. It was Sheila Nevins, who sort of ran HBO Films, a woman named Nancy Abraham, who now runs it. And we sort of walked them through this crazy idea about we wanted to go follow Amish teenagers in their Rumspringa. And she said yes. And she gave us a little bit of money to see if we could pull it off, because the Amish are notoriously difficult to film. And it took us 3 years, and we made Devil's Playground. The film premiered at Sundance. It got nominated for a bunch of Emmys, didn't win, and we were sort of off and running. And that really became a flagship project where, again, in sort of two different ways. So it was a very successful film for HBO, and they then said, well, okay, we like that movie for you. What's the next thing that we can make together? And I think we realized now in retrospect that after we sold Devil's Playground, I think it was 11 straight years where we always had something in production with HBO. And that became just this recurring source of business. They liked us, we liked them. My business partner is a director. I am not. He would often direct the films. He didn't direct Devil's Playground because it took too long. And then because we became these experts in the world of Amish, I went off and sold it as a TV series. And I sold it as a reality show called Amish in the City. And again, it was one of those things where probably no one else on the planet could have sold that show, because the network trusted that because we had made that documentary, that we could convince Amish people to appear on camera. And that became a really big TV show. And it was the first TV show that I ever made. So just this one idea, this one cocktail party launched all these different things. I've subsequently made 2 other series about Amish kids, but also it got me really interested in the idea of subcultures. And, I would say if there's any common theme between all of the projects that I've worked on, it's usually there's a segment of the population that you are familiar with, you've probably heard about, but maybe you haven't paid that much attention. And can we shine a light on them and show you them in a new light? And that could be everything from celebrities to Amish people to nightclub bouncers to mediums, gypsies, tattoo artists, etc. So that's really the common theme. And then we were off and running.
I love that. And getting access is the key. And it's all about earning the trust of your subjects, right? And it takes time.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I said it truly does not matter if it is the biggest celebrity in the world or a person off the street. They have to trust that you are going to represent them in a fair and accurate way. With the Amish in particular, we knew that if we just showed up with cameras, that was not going to work. So one of the reasons why the film took 3 years to make was we sent a producer, guy named Toby Oppenheimer, who is a wonderful producer. I've subsequently been the producer of he was producer of all of Anthony Bourdain's stuff and does a lot of big shows now.
I love
But we
Anthony
sent
Bourdain.
yeah, yeah. So we sent Toby to go live in Lancaster. We actually realized pretty quickly that Lancaster was so closed off because they're used to dealing with tourists, that we weren't going to get a lot of access there. And we found out there were Amish communities in 42 of the 50 states, and he literally lived there for months at a time. When he kind of burned out on living in Amish country, we brought on a wonderful director named Lucy Walker, who has again subsequently gone on to direct a number of Oscar-nominated documentaries, and she really took the reins of the characters that we had started to build relationships with, and she directed the film and did a wonderful job of directing it. But ultimately, it is about that trust factor, and it's making sure that they know that you're going to put in the time, that you're not trying to exploit them, in as much as that means anything. But yeah, building trust with your subjects is the key to any unscripted project.
Since Stick Figure, you've gone on to work with global brands on the buy side. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I had Stick Figure for many years, loved it. It was a really wonderful company, a really great experience. Some of my favorite projects ever. We sold the company in 2014. I was going to stay on and continue to run it, but I got a job offer, an unexpected one, to go be the CEO of Original Media, which is where we first crossed paths. And Original was a very big production company, and Stick Figure was a boutique. And I did want to see how the other half lived a little bit. So I went over to Original as the CEO. I think when I left, we had 11 series on the air, including Ink Master, Comic Book Men, Barbecue Pitmaster, Swamp People. Exactly. And so we had a lot of great series and amazing people like yourself. There was a big corporate merger above my head. They took Original, merged it with another company, and I lost my job. And I looked up one day and I didn't have a job for the first time in my life. Again, from the time I was in college, I had a job, and I was, I think I just turned 40, and I didn't know what to do, and I was worried. I was very lucky. I was being paid still, so I didn't have to worry about paying rent, but I didn't know what to do, and I just started helping people. One of my friends had a makeup brand and she needed to make videos for her makeup brand. Another friend had an idea for a documentary, and I quickly realized that that was a business and it was consulting. And so a lot of what I've done for these last couple of years has been work as a consultant, helping different people and places out with content strategy. And again, that is everything from global top 50 brands like Microsoft, who say we want to build out a content strategy of some sort. Can you help? And I work with them, to individuals. I have clients who are just great people who want to make a film or make a show and don't know how to do it. And I'm always happy to help them. So I did take a little detour. I got another call out of the blue to be a buyer, and a streaming platform called Echo. I had just signed a $250 million joint venture with Walmart, and they needed someone to sort of deploy that budget and figure out how to spend it in smart ways. And so they hired me to do that. So I got to be on the buy side, which was very important because I've been a seller and a producer for so long that I wanted to see what it was like being on the other side. I think it's been very helpful. And then also, how do you smartly spend money and make sure that you're getting a great return? And so I did that for a number of years, and has been very helpful in my sort of subsequent life and my return to consulting, because I do think I have a better understanding both of why budgets are what they are, how you make a return on them, how you make digital content. We were making a lot of shoppable content. So yeah, it's been it's been super interesting since the days of original.
And when you say shoppable content, do you mean branded content, content where you can watch and see products that you can buy in the video?
So it's a little bit of a mixture. So branded content, a lot of times it's stuff that features brands. So these days there are a lot of different pathways where brands can integrate themselves into content. So there's branded content where kind of famously it's like the characters are holding are holding a
Here's
coffee
branded
cup.
content right here.
Exactly. That's yeah. They should be paying more for the placement.
Slave
But
to the grind in Bronxville. I love this coffee shop.
exactly. So that would be branded content where people are using certain products and brands are paying for placement within the content. Um, there is again the more shoppable content, which is different. So some examples of what we did when we were funded by Walmart. One of the hosts of Project Runway, we created basically at Echo. Our whole thing was it was interactive content, so you could make choices to watch video.
Okay, like choose your own adventure.
It would choose your own adventure. It would take you down certain paths. So, but we made this show where we gave you a budget and a quest, and it was design an outfit for a first date, design an outfit for a job interview.
Love that.
And you would have a budget, $500, and two choices would come on screen. Do you want, this blouse or this dress? And you would pick. Do you want, this handbag or this necklace? And then you would pick. And then at the end, Nina Garcia from Project Runway would judge if you made the right choices, and you had to fit it all within your budget. But then at the end, all of the items that you selected, you could add them to your cart because those were all things that were sellable at Walmart. To be honest, the goal for Walmart in that scenario wasn't to sell product. They sell a lot more, handbags than
data collection,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. Exactly. But what it did do, what was really interesting was it got amazing data. So as an example, one of the choices was handbags or shoes. And you have a certain budget and you could pick either like, do you want a handbag or shoes? And I think we found that 90% of women chose shoes over handbags. And because of that, they literally reconfigured the front page of Walmart.com to focus on shoes more than handbags. So that data, again, it wasn't necessarily about how do we move 1,000 units of shoes. It was how can we use the data to better inform some of our buying decisions. And we did similar shows with food where you could, you could design your own cupcakes and then you could add those items to your cart. We did it with home design. You could build a perfect room and you could then buy that rug. So that was what a lot of the content was. Some of it was just entertainment, but a lot of it was this kind of shoppable content. But then the third type of brand integration these days is more sort of title sponsorships. And a lot of that is a brand gets involved because they believe in the message of the content. I make a show right now. I think you and I have talked about with the New York Yankees for the Yes Network, and it's all about numbers. And we have
the story,
the New York
and it's
Lottery.
called this. What's the title, Daniel? The Story of My Number.
Yeah, the show's called The
Yeah.
Story of My Number. It's again
Such a
going
cool
back
title.
to my early. Yeah, I'm a huge Yankees fan, and so to get to work for the Yankees is really great. But our title sponsor is the New York Lottery because our show is all about numbers, and the New York Lottery is all about numbers. So that's an interesting way that a lot of brands are getting involved. Sometimes it's for philanthropic reasons. It's I made a film a couple of years ago that was paid for by a food brand because it was about an interesting thing in the food world.
ConAgra.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes it's really just about getting visibility into a topic that people care about. So I think finding ways for brands to get involved as opposed to just running commercials is a really interesting sort of not new, but it is where the content market is right now is how do you get brands to come on board?
I think that's fascinating, and I would say it's come about since COVID. In the past 5 years, people started looking at their mission, values, and purpose, and figuring out, okay, how do I align with the brands that I'm consuming? How do I align with what's happening around me in the world? And I actually started Evolution Content based on a statistic from McKinsey and Company, which said 2 out of 3 consumers make purchasing decisions based on values alignment. And I think what you've just outlined is a perfect example of that. It's people, but you've taken it to the next level. Brands want to align with other brands that match their MVP. So, I mean,
You
how was
totally right. It's such an, and we could talk for hours on this. I think you're totally right, and so I think it's very different. It used to be in the past that streaming platforms or networks, they wanted brands to just spend money on ads, on ad buys. But now there's just so much opportunity to do collaborations, partnerships. Brands don't want to only spend money on making commercials. Of course, they still make commercials, and there's a huge value in that. But is there a way to also be more integrated? And I think some of it is consumers. Consumers have shown an interest in buying from brands whose values align with theirs. And how do you know what a brand's values are unless the way that you can find out is by watching content that they're sponsoring, by seeing, oh, this is a brand that cares about the environment, or they care about sustainability, or they care about politics, whatever it is. And I think that can be very, very helpful for both the brands and for consumers.
you're very humble, but I want to call out the fact that you just won 2 Emmys. So congratulations, first of all, Daniel. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah. So for the last 10, 15 years, if you went on my LinkedIn profile, you would see the same joke that I've told for many years, which is 13-time Emmy losing producer. I have been lucky enough where the projects that I've worked on have been nominated for about 13 Emmys. Devil's Playground was a bunch. What Remains was a bunch. Some sports stuff that I had done, ESPN projects.
And What Remains is a beautiful film as well.
Oh, thank you so much. That's a very personal one. I love it. I know you're from Virginia, which is where a lot of that was shot. But yeah, so I had resigned myself that I was never going to win, and I was okay with it. And it was a good punchline of 13-time Emmy losing producer. But a couple weeks ago, the show that I make for the New York Yankees, The Story of My Number, we were lucky enough to win 2 New York Emmys for Best Series and for Best Episode, an episode that we made with Aaron Boone, who's the manager of the Yankees. And you sort of talk yourself into saying that, like, you don't care, but I think whenever anyone stands up and reads off a list of names, it could be, playing bingo, or it could be your, high school election. You want them to read your name, and again, more so than for me, I was really happy for my team, who, we just put a lot of effort into it, and my partners, who sort of believed in this vision that we had to make high quality but sort of lower cost content. So it did feel like a validation, and it's pretty cool. I think anyone who works in our world, you kind of envision what your speech is going to be and where you're going to put your trophies. And so finally, after many, many years of not winning, it feels pretty great to win, even though ultimately, that just being nominated is an honor, and just being able to make anything in this climate is a huge, unbelievable accomplishment. And so to me, anyone who is able to get anything out there, is a winner.
Well, congratulations again. You keep redefining the industry, paving new paths. There are so many producers out there now that are out of work. What is happening with TV? Where do you think it's going? What do content creators need to know to be able to adapt in this environment the way that you have?
It's a great question. And again, there's no magic bullet to it. I can tell you some of my thoughts. And I think a big thing is being flexible and truly not saying, well, because this is how it worked last year, this is how it's going to work this year. This is how it worked when I was coming up, and that's how it's going to work now. And to me, where I've been able to reinvent or adapt is, again, a little bit of zigging when other people are zagging. And I spent many years trying to sell reality shows to network and streaming platforms and make documentaries for HBO. And I saw that was it's not fair to say dying business, but a shrinking business. It's harder to do that. And there are people with a lot more resources out there, doing that. And so I tried to look more at, okay, is there a way that I can get a brand to pay for something? Is there a way that I can make local content? Is there a way that I can get funding from international sources, from private investors, from, whoever? I think the big thing these days, which is wonderful, and the best time ever for creators, producers, directors, is the barrier for entry is much lower than it used to be. When I was starting out, again, if HBO hadn't bought Devil's Playground would not have gotten made. They were
Right.
pretty
There was
much
no
the
internet.
only. there was no internet. There was internet, to be fair. There was no there
94,
was no
Al Gore
Google. There was
created,
no,
right.
exactly. But what there wasn't were, you know 30 buyers who want to make to distribute documentaries. There was no YouTube. There was no TikTok. There were no outlets like that where, you know and so to me, if there's a story that you want to tell, just tell it. Just go make it. And you can pick up a camera. And again, we shot a lot of our first projects on film. And these days, you can pick up your phone and you can record something that is significantly better quality than things that I made for the first 5 years of my career. And so to me, if you have the ability, if there's a story that you want to tell, just start and go tell it and put it up on YouTube, put it out on social media, go submit it to film festivals. There's a million different ways that you can get your project out there, and you don't need HBO to buy it. Now, it would be nice if they
It's
did,
nice
and
to
you
have.
still might be
Yeah.
able to do that. But there's a lot more opportunity for people that are just starting out. So I would just encourage everyone to just keep trying. Not every project is going to work, but if you can use your project to get you to the next project, that can be really helpful. And sometimes it is about playing the long game. Again, going and pitching enough things to HBO until they finally say yes. So yeah, I think you kind of just have to think creatively and not back yourself into a corner and say the only place that I want to make my show is for Netflix or for HBO or for someone like that.
I think that that's great advice for anybody out there who's looking to create content. That's so great. And can I tag on one thing? How do you start your day? I ask everyone, do you have a routine in the morning? How do you get your day started? What do you do?
So, as you know, I have two small kids. So most of the time, if I wake up before my kids, we have a few minutes of drinking coffee in the peace and quiet of the morning. And then when one or both of them wake up, it is a tornado again. They're 3 and 1. And so they both go to daycare. So getting ourselves from, like this morning, it was 6:30 to 8:30. That's, we made them breakfast. We played. We have dance parties, and then we get them off to school. But then for me, from a more personal standpoint, obviously, my morning coffee is important, but I like to wake up my brain with puzzles and word games. So I'm an aggressive New York Times crossword puzzle doer, all of the New York Times games, Wordle, Spelling Bee. I literally do every single one. I do the LinkedIn games, but the crossword puzzle is my main thing. I think it is about, honestly, how many days in a row I have completed the New York Times crossword puzzle. That was what I can leave you with.
I just read that Martha Stewart wakes up at 4:30 in the morning and does all the puzzles. So you're in good company.
She and I have that in common. So 1,652 straight days I have done the New York Times crossword puzzle. So that's, yeah.
Respect.
Yeah.
Very impressive. Well, thank you, Daniel Laikind, for taking the morning to sit with me and share a bit about your filmmaking journey. And it's just been a pleasure to get to talk to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. I hope we can speak again, both in a forum like this, and hopefully we can find a way to collaborate soon, because in our business, you can't do it alone. You need great partners, you need great collaborators, and you need a great team. And so always happy to partner on anything.
And that concludes another episode of Evolution Now. Look out for our next episode with Mr. Michael Schultz, principal of the Chapel School, coming up next week.